Legend of Total War here, and today I'm going to go through some of the content that we're going to get in the latest DLC, the Grim and the Grave. So we're going to get Volkmar the Grim for Empire and Helman Ghorst for Vampire accounts. Now, regardless of whether you purchase the DLC or not, you're also going to get Vlad Von Carstein. So I'm going to go through these three legendary lords today in both multiplayer battles and for campaign as well. We'll start with multiplayer, how they affect it. Okay, so I'm just going to turn off all of his abilities to begin with. Yep. So his base cost is going to be 1,150, which is pretty mid-range. Those are his mounts, so he can be on a Warhorse, Barded Warhorse, or a War Altar of Sigma. Now, the real strength of Volkmar the Grim comes in his support abilities. So you're probably going to want to put him on the War Altar of Sigma. Now, the funny thing is, though, as you can see, there's some updates over here in regard to how this is represented, which I think is actually really good. So that's just going to come out with the patch, so you don't need to buy the DLC in order to get that additional information. So you can see here with numbers exactly what you're going to get in compared to the previous form. So if I go it the other way around, just it inverses it. So this War Altar of Sigma, although it sort of weakens him, it gives him less strength. If we have a look down the bottom, down here, you'll be able to see that a bunch of new abilities become available. So when you're putting him on the War Altar of Sigma, you're really making him a support general, which he's definitely got a lot of support abilities. So let's go through some of those. So he's got Benediction over here, which increases leadership, pretty straightforward. We've got Divine Power, which increases the chance that they'll miscast. Miscast, what that does, if you're not familiar, just causes damage to the spellcaster if they miscast it. The spell still goes off. Faith's Bastion, which only works for him, it reduces the amount of damage he takes. So if he's in the middle of a fight, obviously that could be quite useful. It's not a particularly expensive ability either. The Grand Hammer of Sigma, which is basically sort of like an overcasted version of what the warrior priests get. So it's an increased area of effect. So I'm pretty sure if we had a look at the warrior priests and had a look at the Hammer of Sigma, it only works on himself, whereas this one has area of effect of 45 meters, but has the same effect, plus 34 melee attacks. So this will work really well if he's in around his troops. So you don't want to send Volkmar off by himself, because you're really sort of reducing the effect of him. Then he's also got Grand Shield of Faith. Again, we've seen a similar ability to which one is it? This one here, Shield of Faith, 45 meters, 45 meter effect range, 21 seconds, 22% damage resistance. This one, 22% damage resistance. Everything the same except for increased area of effect. Now, that extra 15 meters area of effect is a really big deal. So you're affecting more units, so affecting more of your front line in the middle of the fight. So reducing the amount of damage being done. Of course, that damage resistance there, that's ward save, so that protects against all forms of damage. Magic, fire, physical damage, missiles, everything. And then he gets Grand Soulfire. Again, we've seen something similar to that with the Warrior Priest, the Soulfire, but this one is a little bit better than that. So, increased area of effect, lasts for 7 seconds, gives him 90% magic resistance, which I think if you add on top of it to what he starts off with, it ends up to being 115% magic resistance. So if you use this, I mean, you don't have a very large window of opportunity. If you manage to use this ability at the moment that your enemy spellcaster is going to shoot at Volkmar, you will essentially resist 100% of the damage. However, you're really going to have to keep an eye on him to make sure that, because it has to be used at that very second. Not to mention also, it does a lot of damage around it. Now, he also gets another ability, Banishment. Now, this is a light magic spell, which normally costs a certain amount of magic. So let's grab a light wizard in there, so we can have a look at his ability. So it's a spell. Banishment there. So it's usually costing 12 magic. So it's the exact same move. Except the difference is, for Volkmar, the cooldown is twice as much. Now, this spell here, I've tested this a little bit with Indie Pride, it's really effective against units with high mass. So units like Cairn Wraiths, it basically just tosses them around and doesn't do a whole lot of damage to them, even though it does magical damage. So it does seem to be that vortex damage works well on units that are particularly heavy. So units like Graveguard, anything with like high armor, tends to work well against that. So overall, Volkmar is a support general. Alright, so... Oh, there's one last thing. If we have a look at his item here, this isn't a big deal, but his legendary item, the Jade Griffin, gives him replenishment. Now, the way... in this next coming patch, characters can no longer just heal themselves constantly over and over and over. They can only heal a maximum of 60% of their base hit points. So if he falls down to, say, 40% of his health, he can recharge back to full. But if he loses it again, he can't recharge anymore. So I guess that's there to stop, essentially the spamming of the Death Star. Okay, now, going on to the vampire accounts. Okay, let's go through Helman Ghorst over here. Let's get his base cost to begin with. So he's a fairly cheap general, costing a base of 750. But if you send him in there without any abilities, you're not using his abilities, I guess. Now with this latest patch, he gets a new type of mount, the Brother Ghorst Corpse Cart. Now the Necromancers will also get something similar to that as well. They get the Corpse Carts. It's just that his one is special in regard to the abilities he's get. So if you're going to bring him in, I reckon you should bring him in with the Corpse Cart, because it'll increase the amount of abilities that he gets here. So if you notice, these abilities here like the Unholy Lodestone, Reliquary of Corruption, which we'll go through, Vigor Mortis, they're only available to him if he uses the Corpse Cart. So we'll go through his abilities and the spells that he gets. So over here, Master of the Dead, we've seen this ability before. As long as he's not in melee, he'll replenish the hit points of the combatants around him around a 30 meter range. Effective for the Death Star, obviously. Seen this one as well. Curse of the Undeath. When they're casting, map wide greatly increases hit points of any undead units on the map. Unholy Lodestone here. Replenishes hit points of combatants. So that's really quite useful. Because that does stack with this, so you can increase the amount of hit point replenishment. The Reliquary of Corruption. This one's really, really powerful. So what this does, in a 45 meter radius, I've tested this with Black Orcs. What it does is causes like direct damage to any unit in that 45 meter radius at around 10 to 20 damage per tick, which is really considerable. So if you get him on this cart, and you don't even need to put him in the fight, just keep him just behind the line. The longer the fight goes on, the more damage he's going to do, and you'd be surprised how much damage this thing does. In addition to that, he's got regeneration. So these three here regenerate his health as well, but that one there, that gives him a third regeneration ability, but of course increases his weakness to fire. And this one here, Vigor Mortis, another really useful ability. 45 meter range, constant augment, plus 8 melee attack, plus 8 melee defense. So if you're using the Death Star technique, because the thing is with Cairn Wraiths, which is the main source of the Death Star, they've actually got very low melee attack and melee defense. But of course, because you're using blob tactics, plus 8 melee attack and melee defense will be a huge bonus for the Cairn Wraiths. In addition to that, the usual undead resurgence, so he can increase melee defense and leadership of the units around him. So I reckon Helman Ghorst is the go-to general for the Death Star, if that's what you want to do. But of course, keep in mind now, you can't regenerate health past 60% of the base hit points. Okay, and then he's got some abilities, some magic as well. Invocation of Neck. You basically can't have a Vampire Lord without Invocation of Neck. So we've seen this before. Regenerates health. Probably one of the most useful abilities currently available in the game. And then Van Hell's Dance Macabre. Extra speed, extra melee attack. The Gaze of Nagash does direct damage, very powerful move. Curse of Years, debuff. Wind of Death, very powerful move. If you can manage to go through a line, just does tons of damage. This thing. Again, a lot of other generals have that. Again, it's not something we haven't seen before. And then this is one that only Helman Ghorst have, which is Awaken from the Grave, which can be overcasted as well. So using this just as standard, costs 18 magic. You can only use it once. Spawns a unit of just regular Graveguard. Now I'm pretty sure if you overcast it, it spawns a White King, costing 26 magic. So that's the first magical ability that we've seen that actually spawns a new agent. Now, the agent that you get from it is a White King that's on foot that gets all of these abilities here. So, fairly tough unit, costing it around 982. That's not too bad at all. Okay, then let's go through Vlad Von Carstein here. So let me just take off all of his abilities and his spells first so you get an idea of how much it costs. Oh wait, there was one more thing. Helman Ghorst. His legendary item over here, the Liber Noctis. What this does, increases power recharge rates and reduces his ability recharge time. Doesn't really do a whole lot of damage to self. Like it says there, causes damage to self, but it's like maybe 100 over the course of the 10 seconds there. It's not heaps, but if you're in an emergency situation and you need to like use, for example, that again, there's nothing wrong with using this ability. So you can use a ton of abilities with Helman Ghorst. The weakness to him, though, is that he doesn't have a whole lot of health. He can be very easily sniped, and he's also incredibly slow on this thing. So his speed is only 23, which is I think the same speed as zombies. So you've really got to keep him protected, otherwise he's just going to get killed really fast. Because he is not a fighter. He's all about abilities. He won't fight very well. Okay, so Vlad Von Carstein. Let's go through him. Just taking off all his abilities so you can see his cost. So, base cost of 900. Slightly more expensive than Helman Ghorst. He's got a lot more hit points than him, so he's definitely more of a fighter. He's very similar to Manfred Von Carstein, except that he doesn't have any death magic. So let's go through some of his abilities now. Actually, we'll go through them all. Curse of Undeath, everyone seems to have that. So we've got here Aura of the Dark Grandeur. Reduces leadership, can be very useful, especially against factions like Bretonia that don't have much leadership to begin with. You can just that tiny amount needed to tip them over the edge to make them break. The Hunger, pretty much every vampire has got this, reduces hit points while they're in combat. Master of Beguilement, only affects one unit at a time, so it's not an area of effect. It says affects enemy in range, but if it doesn't actually have the actual effect range, it's only a single entity of unit. So, for example, a single unit of Empire Greatswords, you can reduce their melee attack by minus 46. Now, that generally ensures that they have virtually no chance of hitting you for 36 seconds. So, that will work really well against enemies that have just a few but really powerful units. So, if you use that, for example, on a giant, you're essentially taking it away its ability to land a hit. I'm fairly sure even if you reduce its melee attack down to 0%, the minimum amount of melee percent chance to hit is 10%, I think. Don't quote me on that. Okay, so going through his spells, Invocation of Nehek. What vampire or necromancer would be complete with that Invocation of Nehek? Vanel's Dance Macabre, pretty standard. Gaze of Nagash, Raise the Dead. So overcharge that. So overcast that, you get skeletons instead of zombies. Curse of Years, seen that before. Wind of Death, seen it before. So it's really just the which one is this? This is the lore of vampires that he uses there. It's just a standard set there. Now his abilities, his legendary items, he's got 2 of them. The Blood Drinker, he just constantly recharges health. Now this one here is really useful. The way this works, it's an ability. You can only use it once, and it lasts 40 seconds. When these hit points are below 20%, it's basically like a potion, and it brings them, well, as much health as you can regenerate. So if you've only got 1,000 health left that you can regenerate, then that's as much as you're going to. But if you've got the full recharge, this could be really useful. So this could save his life in the middle of a fight. Okay, so now what we'll do is I'm going to go into the campaign, and I'm going to show each of the new legendary lords how to get them if you don't start off with them, and some of their skill trees and what they're useful, because the usefulness of a legendary lord in multiplayer and in campaign can be completely different. Okay, so what I've done here is I started a new campaign as chosen the legendary lord as Karl Franz, because what I want to do is show you how to get Volkmar. So it's pretty simple. All you have to do to get him is construct the Temple of Sigmar building. Now, the Temple of Sigmar building, in case you don't know, is this one here. So it's a level 4 building. Once you get that, you get Volkmar the Grim. Okay, so I'll just show you now what it's like when you've actually got him. Okay, so you can of course select him in the campaign selection to begin with, if you really want to. So he's the 3rd legendary lord for the Empire. His abilities are, it reduces the upkeep for flagellant units by 15%, which, to be honest, I think flagellants are at this stage really overpriced. So I would say that even with that minus 15% there, it's not enough, because flagellants are really trashy units. Weapon strength plus 30% for all flagellants. That could be good, but again, flagellants are really trashy at the moment. So this here would only really make them worth getting any flagellants at all in a campaign if you had Volkmar as your starting lord. Anyway, let's get in here and I'll show you some of his abilities. Alright, so here we can see Volkmar the Grim on the campaign map on a turn 1. This is a campaign difficulty setting on normal difficulty, just because it gets us an idea of, standardized stats. Now, he starts off with a unit of flagellants. Now, don't forget, this unit here has had its upkeep reduced by 98%, by 15%. So, if you didn't have Volkmar, I think it costs 130 in upkeep normally. That might be on Legendary though, so I don't know, because it changes on the difficulty settings. So it's still more expensive than a swordsman unit. Its weapon strength has definitely gone up, but it's still pretty trashy. Like, the thing is, with the flagellants, they might have, like, have a look here, they don't break, they're completely unbreakable, they'll never rout, but the problem is that they don't have any holding power, they die so quickly, so they're very trashy, and they're a second tier unit, so you have to get them from a tier 2 building, making them not that good, in my opinion. I think they need a bit of a buff. The Tattersouls, on the other hand, these guys do actually seem to perform alright for their cost. Alright, but then we're talking about the unit here, we're not talking too much about Volkmar. Now, the thing is, Volkmar and flagellants, they kind of go hand in hand, because a lot of his ability is geared towards flagellants. And I think until flagellants get a little bit of a buff, it sort of makes it a bit of a waste sometimes with Volkmar. That's just my opinion. I'm not particularly fond of flagellants. Alright, so let's have a look at his abilities. So first thing let's go through is the legendary items that he can get. We've seen the Jade Griffin replenishes his hit points in combat. You can get that as of rank 8. Okay, then he can also get the Staff of Command at rank 13, which increases his melee attack by 6, weapon strength by 12, and this one, the next one, is really good. Public Order plus 5 for all provinces. Now that will stack with Karl Franz's Galmaraz, I believe. So if you get both of those, then even on legendary difficulty, you don't need to worry about Public Order that much anymore, because that's plus 10 faction-wide Public Order bonuses, and that'll of course stack with tech bonuses as well. So having Volkmar the Grim, if you're having Public Order issues, get Volkmar the Grim, because that is honestly probably one of the most useful things for him, especially if you're playing on legendary difficulty, because that has a minus 8 Public Order penalty to all provinces anyway. The rest of the stuff in here is pretty standard. We've seen a lot of these things before. We see his his warrior priest abilities in here, but there's a few slight differences. If we have a look all the way back here, we get his ability, the Work of God, where it gives flagellants 50% missile resistance. Now that's not faction 1, it's just for him. Now that's pretty good, I guess, because flagellants have no armor at all. So that would work really well if you're up against other Empire factions, which use a lot of missile units. Not so useful against Chaos, I guess, because Chaos don't use a whole lot of missiles. Again, this is why I'm a little bit iffy in regard to Flagellants. Now, I guess another one of his major skill trees is up here. So he can get the Warhorse, upgrade to Barded Warhorse, but I don't know why you would bother with that. Waste a skill point. You have to get all 3 of these abilities here before you can get the War Altar of Sigmar, and then you get something really useful. Second Nature, which reduces the cooldown to battle prayers by 50%, which you don't get in multiplayer. So he turns into basically just some sort of super support general by getting this, because you can just keep on using your support stuff over and over again so quickly. They just overbuff your army, so there's a potential for him to just make his army really, really strong. Anyway, that's pretty much the gist of Volkmar the Grim. Now we'll go into both Vlad Von Carstein and Helman Ghorst. Okay, so here's Helman Ghorst. We'll just go through his faction abilities. You only get these abilities if you choose to play as him as your starting lord. So casualty replenishment rate plus 20%. That is huge. That means an additional 20% of your army will be replenished each turn. That'll allow you to just keep your armies on the move really quickly. In addition to that, for Helman Ghorst's army, everyone receives poison attacks, which, if you're not familiar with what poison does, it basically reduces all the offensive stats of the enemy units that's under poison. So that's very effective. So he could be quite a good general to start off with, just because of those abilities there. Vlad Von Carstein, another one that you can start off with, increases campaign movement range by 5%. That's definitely something players like me will enjoy, because I like to get my characters moving very quickly. In addition to that, all units in Vlad Von Carstein's army receive the Vanguard deployment. So you can really sneak up, well, not even just sneak up, just be right in front of your enemy right from the get-go. This is something that doesn't translate, though, into multiplayer battles. Now, here's the thing, though. To get these guys on the campaign, Helman Ghorst is pretty easy. But Vlad Von Carstein, to get him, if you don't choose him as an initial lord, is a massive pain. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start the campaign as Manfred Von Carstein, so that I can show you what the initial conditions are needed to get these other legendary lords. So once again, we've just got a new game here on normal difficulty, because we just want to see what the conditions are to get these guys. So, now, with these new introductions of the legendary lords, prior to this, the Chaos had the most legendary lords, but now the Vampires do, with 4 legendary lords, which I think makes them a very powerful faction. Okay, so looking at Helman Ghorst, what we have to do here, this legendary lord will unlock after dominating 10 sets of captives after battle. Now, dominating is when you, revive some of your own men. It's something that you would use fairly often, so you'd get Helman Ghorst pretty easily. Vlad Von Carstein, on the other hand, this legendary lord will unlock after raising the Altdorf settlement. Now, not only is Altdorf quite a distance away, and you have to really... That's sort of late game, mid to late game that you're even going to get there. But you have to raise Altdorf, which I have to really question the logic on that, because if you're playing as the vampire accounts, you can occupy Altdorf. There isn't really much benefit to raising a settlement like Altdorf, considering how much benefit there is. So it's sort of counterintuitive, I think, to do that just to get Vlad Von Carstein, because the thing is, what you'd do is you'd raise the settlement, but then you'd immediately want to sort of build it back up again, because as the vampire accounts, you'd want to hold on to it. So I think, in my opinion, this needs to be a little bit adjusted, so maybe raise or occupy Altdorf to get Vlad Von Carstein. But even that being said, if you don't start off with Vlad Von Carstein, he's probably going to be the last legendary lord you're able to recruit. Now, with that being said, way to bypass that is you just start off with Vlad Von Carstein, because getting Manfred Von Carstein, all you have to do is conquer all of Western and Eastern Sylvania. It's pretty easy. So if you start off with Vlad Von Carstein, you can get all of the legendary lords probably within the first 40 turns of the campaign. Anyway, now I'll go through each of the new legendary lords on the vampire account side and show you their abilities on the campaign. Okay, so here we've started off with Helman Ghorst. So we'll just go through his abilities. Now, his stats, though, he's not suited for combat. Doesn't have armor-piercing damage, his attacks are low. He's got poison attack, very low hit points, very low armor. If you're going to be using him, you've got to really look after him, because in addition to that, if you're going to get the brother's Ghorst corpse cart, which I really think you should, he's going to be very slow. So just keep in mind, this guy's got some serious strengths, but he's also got some massive weaknesses. He's not suited for combat. Okay, most of his unique abilities are up the top here, but there's one over here. He's Awakened from the Grave. It's the tier 1. You can essentially get that at level 3, Awakened from the Grave. So that's a good way to get Grave Guards early on. So that's really useful. We've got his legendary item here, the Libra Noctis. It's the only one that he gets, but still that's a fairly useful item because you're using a lot of his abilities all the time. So we've got over here Forbidden Scripture, which increases research rate. Probably not something you really need because there's a lot that the vampire accounts can do to increase their research rate anyway. And since you only get essentially 29 points to put into your Legendary Lord, without mods, there are definitely other things that you might want to put it into that you can get extra research rate otherwise. But if you really need it, it's there. Morbid Reunion reduces the cost of Raise the Dead, which I don't really consider to be that much of a problem in the first place. But if you're strapped for cash, could be good. It's not faction-wide, it's just for him. Master of the Dead over here. Passive ability, Master of the Dead, replenishes hit points of companions. We've seen this ability before. It's quite useful. Leading from the front. Now this one here is really good because the corpse carts and mortis engines, especially the mortis engines, they are really, really good units. Especially the mortis engines. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they got nerfed because they are just powerful. Giving them extra melee defense would keep them alive a lot longer because the thing is the mortis engine has a lot of hit points. It's like 7,600. So reducing the amount of damage it'll take in melee is really massive. So that's definitely an ability you're going to want because I reckon every single one of your armies, if you're going to be fighting them more manually, you're going to be wanting as many, not as many mortis engines as maybe 1 or 2 per army will really keep you in good form. Anyway, I go more into the mortis engines in a video I'll release later today. So stay clear for watch out for that one. That's the one I'm playing with Indie Pride. And Grave Ward, we've seen that before. So his abilities aren't that much different from any other vampire or necromancer lord. He's just got a few additional things. It's really just the corpse guard here. Now, when you get the corpse guard, you automatically get those abilities. You don't have to learn them in addition to it. So that is his real strength right there, the corpse cart. Because a lot of these abilities there are very good. I can't click it though and show you, but I've already shown you what they are. Anyway, it's like increased damage in area of effect, increased melee attack and melee defense, and I think health regeneration for those around him. So Helman Ghorst, very useful support general. Do not put him in melee because he is not good for it. Okay, now I'll show you Vlad Von Carstein. Okay, so here we are with Vlad Von Carstein. Now, in my opinion, I think Vlad Von Carstein is the go-to legendary lord to start off with, simply because that way you bypass his sort of really late game unlocking, and all the other legendary lords are quite easy. So if we just go through them, Manfred Von Carstein, Eastern and Western Sylvania, that's very easy to do. You can do that within the first few turns. What's this? Forbidden Library. You're going to want as many Forbidden Libraries as you can get anyway, so you're going to get Heinrich Kemmler. Helman Ghorst, after dominating 10 sets of captives. That'll, depending on, of course, how aggressive you are, you'll get him pretty early on. Unless, of course, you're not dominating them, which I really don't understand why you wouldn't, because it's very useful. Anyway, Vlad Von Carstein. Of course, he starts off with, some units here, which you can look at, but I'm not really focusing on the units, I'm focusing on their abilities. Okay, looking at what he's got, he doesn't have any mounts, but he starts off with one of the highest hit points of a general that you can get in the game. He also starts off with the attribute Siege Attacker. Now that's really useful because, especially with the vampire accounts, they don't have any artillery. They do have some units that can bypass the siege stage, like the Vargulf and I don't know what else, which they released in a patch fairly recently. And what this does is really makes it a lot faster moving. So he's a very good general for quick attacks, getting into a settlement without the tediousness of a siege. Okay, so we've seen Blood Drinker, at least in regard to its ability, but we haven't seen the actual stats it provides. Now, it doesn't provide these stats in multiplayer, it just provides the ability. So weapon strength plus 5%, reduced army cost, increased vampiric corruption, post-battle loot amount. Fairly useful. Get it fairly early on. It's a good weapon. The Von Carstein ring, again we've seen this. Basically it's a get out of jail free card if you're about to die. Okay, so over here, this one here, this is really interesting. And if you've got the mod, Valuable Veterans, well then this makes that mod totally overpowered for vampire counts if you use his ability. So basically he acts as a trainer for all units faction-wide, and this isn't if you choose him as a leader, this is just if you've got him at all. All units faction-wide get 150 experience point per turn, which is that's just insane. I think that's going to get nerfed, to be honest, because that is, you're going to have, essentially, if you've got Vlad Von Carstein, you're going to have rank 9 troops pretty quickly, and they're just going to be all rank 9. So that means Vlad Von Carstein, if you're playing as a legendary, playing as the vampire counts, you have to get that ability, because it buffs not just his units, but all units faction-wide. That's just insane. I can't even describe just how powerful that ability is. Cloud of Horror, good extra campaign movement range, I'm all for that. Mesmerizing Aura, reduced hero success chance by 9%. Law of Vampires, yeah, we've seen that ability before. And then, of course, we can see his abilities in here, which is a little bit here and there. So he's got some... It's just the Law of Vampires, which, you know, we've seen... just about every Vampire Lord and Necromancer has got vampire stuff. Also, the stuff around here, it's pretty standard. Every Vampire Lord has got, you know, these melee buffing abilities, so nothing new there. It really just comes down to these abilities up here. These are the ones that are new, well, up until this point here, for the new Legendary Lords. But the thing is, these are the best stuff, especially Coven of Undeath. Okay, and with that, we've pretty much gone through all the basics of the new Legendary Lords. Obviously, there might be one or two things that I haven't discovered yet, but, you know, at least I think I've given you enough information for you guys to decide whether or not you want to purchase this DLC. This is obviously something for if you're playing mostly Empire faction or Vampire accounts, then this DLC will obviously add a lot more depth to your gameplay. Because I personally love to play with a lot of Legendary Lords, so I find it, especially for the Vampire accounts, makes it a lot more fun. Well, you're going to get Vlad Von Carstein anyway, but Helman Ghorst is definitely an interesting general. Anyway, I'll leave that with you guys. I won't recommend whether or not to purchase the DLC or not. It's entirely up to you. All I do is give you the information so you can make your own mind up. And I'll see you next time.